Hello Fiends, welcome back once again to the Vault of EC. Tommy Burns here. Today we're going to take a look at the latest in the ongoing Fantagraphics EC Artist Library series, and this is A Slight Case of Murder and Other Stories by George Evans. And this collection is all of George Evans's EC horror stories in one place. It's a fantastic book. It includes the story Indisposed, which for me was an introduction to George Evans's EC horror work because it was the story chosen to lead the legendary Big Book from Nostalgia Press in 1971. And Indisposed might have, for that reason, been the first EC horror story I ever read. And George Evans has always been a great part of the EC magic to me. Beautiful black and white crisp line art reproduction here. And in addition to all of his EC horror stories, there are his 3 stories for the New Direction title Impact. There's a great bio by Steven Ringenberg. And once again, there is an introduction from yours truly. This was a very fun book to work on. I loved rereading all of Evans's horror stuff. And this is the 10th book in the series that I've written the introduction for. So it's been a lot of fun writing the introductions for these volumes, but I want to highlight one of the things about this one that I am the happiest about. And this was very cool because anyone who's on the EC Fan-Addict Club on Facebook knows that for a very long time I've been fascinated with the final issue of Tales from the Crypt, and especially the story Blind Alleys. And the changes to the host over the years in the various reprints is something that I've been tracking. I did a photo album for it on the page. So to clarify what I'm talking about, here is the last issue of Tales from the Crypt. And this was prepared as a book called Crypt of Terror. It was going to be the 4th horror title, but it was killed before it was ever born because of the Senate subcommittee hearings and the anti-comics hysteria of the 50s and Bill Gaines voluntarily withdrawing all of the new trend titles. In September of 1954, this book was never released as Crypt of Terror #1, even though, as you can see right here, the Crypt Keeper is introducing it as such. It never happened. The contents were shelved for almost 5 months and finally released as the last issue of Tales from the Crypt. There's a legendary story in this comic called Blind Alleys, and it's George Evans's story for this issue. And as you can see, in the original comic, it is introduced by the Vault Keeper. So there he is introducing the story. And then in the final panel, there's the Vault Keeper again. And what happened was, for years, this was the only place where you could see the story with the Vault Keeper and his original dialogue, because when this book came out in 1964, that story, Blind Alleys, was sandwiched between 2 Vault Keeper stories. So for continuity's sake, they replaced the Vault Keeper with the Crypt Keeper as the host. What they did at the time, though, was they altered the original art. And they actually changed the story on the original art boards to the Crypt Keeper. So when this story was presented in Crypt of Terror #1, which was issued by East Coast Comics in 1973, and it's the only time that this comic has appeared with its original title as originally intended. But here you've got the Crypt Keeper. The Crypt Keeper was added as the host in 1964. The original art was altered, and therefore all subsequent reprints had the Crypt Keeper as the host. And there he is in the final panel. And it kind of made no sense because he's talking about turning you back to the Vault Keeper, and he's talking about taking over from the Vault Keeper. And it's actually now in Crypt of Terror #1 in the reprint, there's 3 Crypt Keeper stories followed by 1 Old Witch story. And it didn't make a lot of sense. And it confused people for a long time until it was figured out that, hey, the art was altered for that paperback book. So I said all subsequent reprint projects, because they sourced the original art. And since the original art was altered, when Russ Cochran did the complete EC library sets, once again, it's the Crypt Keeper hosting Blind Alleys. And once again, it makes no sense in the context of the original comic book, where it did make sense in the paperback for continuity's sake to change it to the Crypt Keeper. What didn't make sense was the fact that the original art was permanently altered, and therefore all subsequent reprints featured the Crypt Keeper, the wrong host, saying the wrong dialogue compared to the original comic book. And there's many, many instances of the Ballantine paperbacks, Tales from the Crypt, Vault of Horror, Tales of the Incredible, they were altered, and the original art was actually altered in the 60s. And if you see images and scans of the original art now, a lot of them still have those changes. There's dialogue changes, but the biggest change, of course, was changing the Vault Keeper to the Crypt Keeper for Blind Alleys. That brings me to this book again. We're full circle because the Vault Keeper has been restored to his rightful place as the host of Blind Alleys. It's something I talk about in the introduction to the book. And there he is with his original dialogue and the original word balloon shape, which was also altered for the paperback in the 60s. So, this was a dream project for me. It was a wonderful thing to work on, and I was so happy to bring the Vault Keeper back to Blind Alleys. It might seem like minutia because, frankly, it is minutia, but it's an important part of the EC history, and it's something that I'm very pleased to have done because the Vault Keeper is my main man. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy the book, and I hope you keep enjoying the Fan-Addict EC Artist Library series, and I'll talk to you again soon.